All right, so when we're talking about anxiety, one thing that, or a term that comes up is what's called free-floating anxiety. So free-floating anxiety is when anxiety happens and it's unrelated to any realistic or known source. Just all of a sudden you start feeling anxiety. So if you've never had a panic or anxiety attack, then good for you. I hope you never have to experience one. But it's really quite frightening. Your body goes into a fight or flight type of response where your heart starts beating very rapidly. It can be hard to breathe. Your muscles feel kind of like tingly and weird, and sometimes it can feel like someone's kind of sitting on your chest because it's hard to breathe, and you just are freaking out all of a sudden, and you don't really know why. It's just out of nowhere, boom, you've gone into this, fight or flight panic mode. That's kind of free-floating anxiety. So people with anxiety disorders a lot of times will experience this free-floating anxiety where their anxiety will just pop up out of nowhere. Just like, hey, I'm here. Hi, it's your anxiety. And you're like, why are you here? What is this happening? And we can't really pinpoint the reason. Now, there is a reason. There's always a reason. There's something that's causing this. It may be a psychological issue that you need to deal with. It may be an imbalance in your brain. There's a cause for it. There's something there, but you don't know what it is, right? You can't pinpoint it. So it's free-floating anxiety. Now, a phobia is when you have an irrational or persistent fear of something. Maybe an object, maybe a situation, maybe a social activity. So with a phobia, it's irrational, right? It's past the point where an average person should feel fear. And it's persistent. It happens every single time you're in that situation or confronted with this thing. So some people may experience like a social phobia, which is a fear of a negative evaluation in social situations. So people with things like social anxiety disorder and social phobias won't go anywhere where there's going to be a group of people, pretty much ever, because they have a overwhelming anxiety about what's going to happen or how these people are going to treat them. Now, this doesn't mean, oh, they're just introverts, right? Like, I don't like going to parties. When I get invited to parties, I'm like, oh God, that sounds awful. It's not because I have social anxiety disorder. It's just that I generally don't like people. I like you guys, of course, you're great. But I don't like small talk. I don't like going to parties. I don't like being forced to interact with people I don't know. It's draining to me as an introvert. But I will go if I have to, and I'll do my 5 minutes, and then I'll usually say, oh no, I forgot the house is on fire, and I'll leave. But people with a social phobia won't even put themselves in that situation, right? They can't even get themselves to that point, right? They just have an overwhelming anxiety to the thought of even having to go into a group of people or into a room where they don't know anybody. Now again, if I was told, hey, you got to go into this room where you don't know anybody and spend time with them, and you don't know why or what's going on, like, you should feel some anxiety about that. Walking into a room where you don't know anyone should make you feel at least a little bit of anxiety. And that's adaptive, right? That's our body saying, are these people friend or foe? Right? Are these people, I'm sorry if you can hear my kids screaming in the background. We should be a little bit like wary, like, all right, what's we do? And that's what we do, right? We walk in where we don't know people, we kind of check people out, right? The first time you walk into a classroom for a new class, back when we used to be in classrooms, and you kind of look around like, okay, like, who should I sit next to? Like, who do I think might be my friend? What's going on? I'm going to check them out a little bit, right? That's kind of our way of adapting to the situation of not knowing someone. That's normal. But, refusing to even come on campus to take a class because you're so frightened of having to be around people, that would be to the point of an anxiety disorder. All right, so, okay, my children are really bothering me. Hold, please. All right, yield at my children. They'll be quiet for about 2 minutes now. Let's continue. All right. So specific phobias are when we know exactly what the thing is that we're afraid of. And so it's an irrational fear of a very specific thing. And again, it has to go to the point of being irrational, not normal. All right, so all of these things it's normal to be a little scared of. Being scared is not having a phobia. A phobia causes us to go into a full-blown panic attack, anxiety attack, which is a very different thing. All right, so a common phobia is claustrophobia. So people who are claustrophobic have a fear of enclosed spaces. people who have, claustrophobia will not go anywhere where there is a, very small space. So people with severe claustrophobia won't go into elevators. They won't go into walk-in closets. They won't go into rooms without windows. All right. It causes them to have, severe anxiety, even thinking about it. All right. So my mom has claustrophobia. It isn't to the point where she won't ride in an elevator, but she really doesn't like having to be in elevators or any small places like that. She's made me swear to her that I won't put her in a coffin when she dies. And I'm like, well, you'll be dead, Mom, so you won't even know. But she's like, I don't want to be in a box. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's cheaper to cremate you anyway. I had a student once that had severe claustrophobia where he could not ride in elevators, and he actually lost his job at the hospital that he worked at because he had gotten a promotion, but the promotion required him to be bringing different pieces of equipment to the different floors of the hospital, which required you to go into an elevator, and he could not do it. And you obviously can't carry, large ventilators and things up the stairs. And so that fear, that claustrophobia, cost him his job in the end. Now, the good thing about phobias is that we can get rid of them. So it's one of the really great things about we rarely can completely cure you of something in psychology, but we can completely get rid of a phobia. And the way that we completely get rid of a phobia is by using learning theory. Remember that all the way back in chapter, I think it was 6 that we did learning theories, is we use shaping. All right, remember what shaping is? Shaping is when we have a great big behavior we want you to change, and so we reinforce smaller behaviors along the way. Well, that's what we can do to get rid of a phobia. So if you have claustrophobia, all right, the big behavior we want you to be able to do is to not have anxiety when you maybe get on an elevator. So we can take small steps to get you there. So we usually start with just having you talk about your fear. And then we have you maybe start to visualize, being in an elevator, and then we deal with the anxiety and how that raises up. And then we take a little bit closer, and maybe we go and we look at an elevator, and then we keep taking smaller, steps forward until we finally get you into an elevator and calm down your anxiety and get you to be able to do this thing that you didn't think you'd ever be able to do. So there's 2 schools of thought on this. One school of thought that has been proven is that, yes, doing the shaping activity can get rid of a specific phobia. There's another school of thought that says, let's just throw you into the elevator and force you to deal with it. There has been studies that have shown that that does work. However, it's pretty traumatizing to the person, so I don't know if that's my way that I would go. But either way, we can actually stop you from having a phobia, which is cool. All right, what's another big phobia? Acrophobia, fear of heights. Again, it's normal to have a fear of heights. We should be a little bit scared when we go up to the top of a very high building and we look down. If you've ever been to the top of the Empire State Building and looked down, it's like, whoa, I'm up really high, and it makes your tummy feel a little weird. In the Sears Tower, which isn't called the Sears Tower anymore in Chicago, you can go up to the top, and they have made this glass lookout shelf where you can walk out onto it, and it's just glass, so it's like you're standing so many stories up, just straight down, I'm not going to do that. I don't have acrophobia, but I'm cool off of standing on glass, 80 stories up. I'm all right to do that. All right, that should make you feel a little wee. However, people with acrophobia wouldn't even go up to that top of that building. That wouldn't even be a thing they would do. All right, they don't fly on airplanes. All right, they don't like to go over bridges. They don't like to be on the second floor of buildings and look down. Anything like that is too much for them. It causes them to have severe panic, severe anxiety. All right, that's the difference between a fear, just a normal fear, and a phobia. Agoraphobia is a fear of not being able to escape from a situation. So people with agoraphobia usually won't leave their homes, right? We used to call them shut-ins, right? People that never leave their house. It's because they fear what could happen once they leave. They have so much fear that something bad will happen to them if they leave out of their little controlled area that they cannot leave their home. They cannot walk outside. Again, being a little concerned that something bad could happen to you is normal. Having it be so bad that you won't leave your home is worse. Now, this is kind of funny to be saying this in the middle of the, coronavirus, where you really shouldn't be going outside and mingling with people. But that's very different from having agoraphobia. All right, so again, we would use small steps and shaping and reinforcements to kind of help someone finally be able to say, it's okay for me to go outside. And we would take these kind of smaller steps to, getting them to just go out onto the front porch and then maybe down to get their mail, right? Like small little steps until they're able to fully leave their house and not have a full panic attack would be how we would deal with that. All right, so one of the anxiety disorders that, pretty much everyone has heard of is OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, obsessive compulsive disorder on its own is an anxiety disorder. It is an Axis 1 disorder. There is also a less severe type of this, which is obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is an Axis 2 disorder, less severe and more common. So, true obsessive compulsive disorder is a very hardcore Axis 1 disorder that requires a lot of therapy and usually a lot of medication to help someone overcome it. And most people with OCD will not do the therapy that is required to help them overcome their OCD because it's pretty intense and it takes a lot out of them. Obsessive compulsive disorder, people always say, people always joke about it. Like, oh, I'm so OCD. Oh, I'm this OCD. I'm OCD that. Like, no, you're not. Most people don't have obsessive. Just because you like to have things a certain way, just because you like to line up your M&Ms before you eat them, or, like, I don't like it when the bowls that I'm stacking, if two of the same color are with each other, I have to change it because it bothers me. That doesn't mean I have obsessive compulsive disorder. It means that I'm a little weird, and we all are a little weird. It does not mean you have OCD. True OCD is a very difficult disorder to deal with. It is a very hard disorder for someone to live with, and it can ruin people's lives because of how severe it can be. Obsessive compulsive disorder is characterized by obsessions and compulsions. So obsessions are thoughts, compulsions are actions. With obsessive compulsive disorder, you have an obsessive thought that is kind of circling your brain at all times, and that obsessive thought makes you have to do, or it tells you pretty much that you have to then do an action, a compulsion, in order to stop the obsessive thought. All right, so you have this thing swirling, and the only way to get it to stop swirling is to do an action. As long as you do the action, then the swirling stops. But the problem is that the swirling just starts back up again. And it's this constant, bad thought followed by the action, and the bad thought followed by the action over and over and over and over again. And it starts to control your life. So a very common obsessive thought is that you're going to die, or that there's germs everywhere, or that there's something bad's going to happen to you. And the only way to stop this bad thing from happening to you is to do these compulsive behaviors. So hand washing is a very common compulsive behavior to a germ obsession. All right, there's germs everywhere. I have to wash my hands, wash my hands. Now, is washing your hands a good thing to do? Of course it is. We should wash our hands, especially after we use the bathroom, before we touch our food and things like that. However, people with OCD will wash their hands 50, 70, 100 times a day. They're washing their hands so much that the skin is coming off of their hands. Their skin is so raw and it's so painful that they are crying while they're washing their hands because it hurts them so badly, but they can't stop doing it. Because that obsessive thought is going over and over. If you don't wash your hands, you're going to get some germs that are going to kill you and you're going to die. And it's happening over and over and over again, and they can't stop themselves. Right? This is not a funny, ha-ha, let's make fun of it disease. No diseases are, but, people, there's a lot of people that talk about OCD like it's just this silly little thing. This is a very hardcore disorder for a lot of people to deal with. They may have like a safety obsessive thought, where they constantly are worried about their safety, and so they have to make sure that the door is locked, but the door has to be locked exactly 12 times. And if I lock it 11 times, I cannot lock 11 times, it has to be 12 times. So I lock it 12 times and I walk away and I'm like, wait, did I actually lock it 12 times? I better go back and do it again. I do it again. And then I go lay down in bed, like, wait, I'm not sure if I actually did it. And I get back and I lock it again. I lock it again. I lock it again. And I have to keep doing it. Right? I can't do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to check and make sure. Is your seatbelt fastened? Okay, wait, did you fasten your seatbelt? Are you sure your seatbelt's fastened? Did you check and make sure it was clicked? Like this constant need to do that compulsive behavior to calm the obsessive voice in their head. So, OCD is treatable, like I said, but the treatment is difficult. The treatment involves medical treatment as well as psychological treatment. So a lot of people with OCD will do the medical route only and will not do the psychological treatment because it's difficult and they don't want to do it because it is so hard to do. So people with OCD are usually on some pretty hardcore anti-anxiety medications that can kind of calm that obsessive thought process in their head and maybe calm down the compulsions a little bit, but it doesn't cure anything, and it doesn't make it actually stop. So they'll still have the obsessions, they'll still have the compulsions, it just won't raise up to the level of like full-blown panic attacks for them if they keep taking their anxiety medications. But that means taking an anxiety medication for the rest of your life, pretty much. OCD is a extremely genetically passed down disorder. So parents who have OCD very frequently have children that have OCD. Now, is that just because there is a gene for OCD? Probably not, but you probably have multiple genes that put you at a higher risk for OCD if a family member has it. So you have a genetic predisposition for OCD. But if you have the genetic predisposition for it, and then you're raised by parents who have it, your environment is surrounded by these obsessions and these compulsions, it's going to be more likely to bring out obsessions and compulsions in you. All right, so when we look at like adoption studies of children who were adopted and whose biological parents have OCD, they don't have as high of an incidence of OCD as the children who were raised with the parents with OCD. However, they do have a higher than average likelihood of developing it than people who didn't have parents who have OCD. So there is a genetic predisposition that it can be passed down to you from parents who have obsessive compulsive disorder. So the psychological treatment for it is, again, kind of using learning theory and reinforcement and shaping to get you out of the obsessive thoughts. Now, here's the thing about OCD that makes it hard to treat, is that you want to say to someone like, oh, well, you just don't need to wash your hands that many times a day, right? Just logically, just hit them with some logic. That'll stop. But that doesn't work. All right. Their obsessions, they believe their obsessions down to their bones. All right. Their obsessive thoughts are absolutely the truth to them. So just telling them, oh, that's a silly thought, you shouldn't think that way, isn't going to do nothing. I compare it to take someone who fundamentally believes in God and their religion and say, well, that's just silly. You shouldn't believe in God. Do you think that's all you would need to do? That boom, that people will be like, oh, you're right. I'm not going to believe in God anymore. Like, no. That level in which that person believes in God or believes in Jesus as their savior, that's the level to which these people believe their obsessions are true. If they do not wash their hands, if they do not lock that door, if they do not triple check this every single time, then this thing is absolutely going to happen. And they believe it to the core of their being. So you cannot just say, oh, it's silly, stop doing that. That's not how you can do it. So if you think about this obsessive thoughts, these compulsions as being on a continuum, people with OCD are on the very far end of the continuum. All right. Average normal behavior would be in the middle of the continuum. And then there's a whole other side of the continuum that's like past normal behavior, but on the other side. In order to kind of get you to not experience OCD as much, we have to shift you from one side of the continuum to the other. We can't just stop in the middle at average behavior. We have to swing you all the way over to the other side in order to kind of get your brain to click over and be like, oh, huh, okay. And we can't change the obsessions. Like trying to work on the obsession, the thinking part, doesn't work. Can't do it. Just throw that out. We have to only work on the compulsions. We have to change the behavior. Because remember, what we've talked about before in our last chapter, what happens when your thoughts and your behaviors don't match up? When your thoughts and behaviors don't match, you start to experience cognitive dissonance. You don't like it, right? Your brain doesn't like it when you're doing something that you don't believe in. So if we change your behavior, which people don't like to do, but if you can change the behavior, the thought process will change as well. So with OCD, what we try and do through therapy, it's change the behavior. We have to change the compulsion. If we get you to stop the compulsion, then the obsession will also stop as well. The obsession will start to, align with, oh, okay, I'm not washing my hands, but I'm also not getting sick. I'm not dying. No one has cancer in my family because I didn't wash my hands. My brain is going to start to then go with the behavior, kind of match up, align with it. But we got to get you to change those behaviors. And as you know, people aren't good at changing behaviors. And when the behavior is as disordered as it is with a compulsion and OCD, it's really hard to get people to change those compulsions, to change those behaviors. So what we have to do is we have to get them to go from one side of the spectrum all the way to the other to kind of reset that brain chemistry. So there used to be a show on TV called The OCD Project, which was on like VH1 or someplace weird, which was a weird place to have it, but it actually was a really good show. And you all know how skeptical I am of anything psychology related on TV or in the movies, and this was actually quite good. But there was a woman who was, had OCD, and she could not eat anything that was made by anyone other than herself. That she had to make everything from absolute scratch, where everything came from. And she would not eat at restaurants. She would not eat or drink anything that wasn't prepared by herself because she was convinced that she would pretty much die if it happened. And so the therapist who had been working with her, finally got her to go to a cafe, get some coffee, and eat a scone. And so they sat down. Her mom came with her. Her mom was part of her treatment process. Mom was there. Therapist was there. The girl was there. And they said, okay, we're going to sit down. We're going to order a coffee. We're going to order a scone. And she's like, okay. And they'd gotten to the point where she was capable of doing that. And I said, okay, so now that would be kind of normal average behavior, right? Where you would be able to go to a coffee shop and do that. However, that is not enough to have really gotten her OCD to completely go away. We have to shift past that. We have to go to the opposite end. So another one of her kind of obsessions was because it all kind of went to cleanliness, right? If I don't know where these things were, I don't know if they were clean or not. I don't know if something bad got into them. So the therapist said, okay, now that we've sat here and we've done this, we're now going to go into the bathroom and we're going to go drink our coffee and eat our scones in the bathroom. And the girl was like, oh my God, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. I don't know who's been in the bathroom, what's going on there. It's like, well, you can do that. And we're going to. So we're going to go in there. So they got into the bathroom and they took a bite of their scone. And they took a drink of their coffee. And like, okay, see, we're all okay. We were able to eat in the bathroom and everything's fine. And you could see the girl like, okay, I got anxiety. Like, this is really hard. And they said, okay, now we're going to go sit next to the toilet. And we're going to take a bite of our scone from the toilet. And we're next to the toilet as we sit next to the toilet and drink. And she's just like, I can't do this. Now, again, is that normal behavior? No, we're going to the other side of the spectrum, right? We're going to something that's completely different from behavior. But we have to show them that even doing something completely on the other side of the spectrum from where you were, sitting next to a public toilet and taking a bite of a scone, it still won't kill you. All right? You're still going to be okay. And so, so they finally got her to do it, and she did it. She's like, okay, see, everything's okay. Like, you're all right. You can do this. And so the therapist then's like, okay, we're going to put our scone on the toilet seat, and then we're going to pick it up, and we're going to take a bite out of it. And the girl was like, I can't do that. Oh, my God. She starts freaking out. Which, of course, because, ew, gross. No one wants to do that, right? But will it kill you? No, it won't. No one wants to do it. It isn't normal behavior. If you told me that every day you put scones on toilet seats before you ate them, I'd be like, there's something wrong with you. But if I'm trying to get you from one extreme to the other in order to land in the middle, we're going to have to go to that other extreme. So this is my favorite part of the whole episode. The mom takes her scone, dips it into the toilet water, and takes a bite out of it. And I thought the girl was going to pass out because I was about to pass out just watching it. And the girl's like, oh my God, why would you do that, Mom? Why would you do that? And the mom just dead-eyed looked right at the girl. And she said, because I love you. And I would do anything to show you that, that you can be better. And if it means that I have to dip a scone in toilet water to get you better, then I'm going to do it. And I was like, oh, and I'm like bawling, crying. So I'm like, moms are the best. Now, again, something you wouldn't normally do. But you have to kind of shift all the way over to that other total extreme so that your brain will rebound back to average, normal, logical behavior. All right. Now, as you can see by that example, most people aren't going to be willing to go that far. All right. That kind of treatment, which is what we really need to do, is to push you to do these behaviors that you are uncomfortable doing. Most people aren't willing to do it. People with OCD are like, I can't not do my compulsions. I can't do it. I'll take my anxiety medications, and that's just as far as I'm going to go. And that's why OCD is so difficult to treat, is because it's so hard to get people to change their behaviors. And behavior change is pretty much the only way that we can help to cure and get people's OCD to be at a much more manageable place.